Welcome to Another Thing. I'm Larry Menti. State budget problems have led to calls for an increase in taxes in our area. Now, depending on where you live, you're looking at a possible increase in the gas tax, the property tax, the sales tax, or the state income tax. The question becomes, where does it all end? When is enough enough? Our guest today will attempt to answer that very question. But first, let's get a check on the state of state taxes from Ellen Kolozdziej. Ellen.
Thank you, Larry. Well, as Benjamin Franklin famously said, there are only two things certain in life: death and taxes. And 2016 is certainly shaping up to be very interesting on many tax issues here in Pennsylvania and in all the surrounding states.
Your taxes will be going up in Pennsylvania one way or another. Most likely it's going to be through a combination of a state income tax increase and a state sales tax increase.
John Featherman is a writer for Philly.com who covers politics. Now, even though there's still no budget deal in Pennsylvania, he believes the state sales tax will go from 6% to 7.25%. If that happens, Philadelphia's sales tax would jump from 8% to a whopping 9.25%, making it one of the highest in the nation. Even Delaware, one of the most tax-friendly states, is considering a sales tax for the first time in history.
I'm not surprised, and quite frankly, I think that it's something that's been in the works for a long time. Again, most state governments have pension obligations where they didn't properly fund them, or they took the money that was intended to fund them and they used it for something else.
In New Jersey, one of the most unfriendly tax states with the second highest property tax in the U.S., there aren't any proposals to raise taxes right now. That's because Featherman says there's a presidential election coming up.
There are always some people at the state legislature who want to raise taxes. However, it's not a major issue in New Jersey right now. I think the major issue is Chris Christie's low polling.
And in New York City, Senator Chuck Schumer is touting the commuter benefit law as a way to cut taxes.
Now, there's a monthly tax deduction for commuting costs that can add up to more than $1,000 a year in savings for the average commuter.
Lawmakers here in Pennsylvania recently shot down a bill that would have basically eliminated the school property tax. Now, that proposal only failed to pass by one vote, so expect to see that issue resurrected very shortly. Reporting for Another Thing, I'm Ellen Kolozdziej.
All right, thanks, Ellen. Let's talk more about state taxes. Do they ever come down? Jerry Cantrell is the president of the New Jersey Taxpayers Alliance, and Somerdale Mayor Gary Passanante is chair of the League of Municipalities Property Tax Reform Task Force. I want to start with the general question. I know that you're both concerned about New Jersey, but I want to start with the general question because we broadcast to 4 states. And all of the states have tax concerns right now. In Pennsylvania, they're talking about raising the sales tax to be the second highest in the country. They just had a vote to try to do away with property taxes. It failed by one vote. Even in Delaware, they're talking about raising taxes for the first time in a long time. You know, not having low taxes is part of their DNA. They're the most tax-friendly state in the country, New Jersey being the least tax-friendly state in the country. So I ask you both, do taxes ever come down?
Well, I think governments like to spend. I mean, you know, we as individuals, we love to go out and buy things and acquire new things. It's not a typical mentality, certainly not in the last few decades. You know, we expect more services from mayors, as, you know, we have talked about. And, you know, the people kind of come along and by and large, politicians like to tell them positive things and we give them more toys, et cetera, but those things cost.
Mayor, state taxes.
I can tell you, Larry, that, you know, I've been mayor 20 years, and not once have I ever promised that I was going to cut property taxes, okay? Because I think that's a foolish approach, and I don't tell people what they want to hear. I tell them the truth. Costs go up everywhere, okay? In our common day-to-day lives, costs go up. So to deliver services, no one could expect the cost of delivering services today to be the same as it is 10 years from now or 10 years ago. The real key is it in line with the rate of inflation, with the cost of living? I think people are willing to live with a comfortable, modest increase if it's consistent with what they're used to dealing with at home. The problem is, in a lot of government situations, that's not the case. You know, their costs from at home are minuscule compared to what the increases at the local level are happening. And it's not necessarily just the municipalities that are doing it. It's all the mandates that we have to enforce, collecting for the schools, collecting for the counties, that we don't control.
Well, let me make the argument that you hear a lot. Now, Mayor, I'll have you answer first, and then Jerry, if you could jump in as well. The argument you hear a lot is if a company has a downturn or a company doesn't make the profit that they thought were going to make, they cut. They have to reduce the size. They have to live within their budget. Families have to live within their budget. But it seems like governments just go out and tax more, that they always can have a never-ending supply of money coming in just by taxing a little bit more. Why can't, is there not enough room to cut?
Well, I think if you look at the property tax, because that's what we're talking about, is the property tax figure, the average cost of municipal services is 15 to 25% of that property tax bill. So I would say that in many cases municipalities are holding the line, and in many cases they're cutting. The problem is the other areas, the other 75% plus, we have no control of, are rising at rapid levels, and that is part of the real problem with the property tax equation.
Jerry?
Well, I think it extends beyond property taxes.
Because if you take that answer, it never is going to change.
Exactly.
Yes.
You know, the reality of the situation is for every dollar of revenue, there are multiple individuals and special interests who want access to that money, and they fight over it at the state level, at the federal level. But the point being is, New Jersey, it isn't just the property taxes. If you look at New Jersey, the Tax Foundation just released its state index. New Jersey is 50th in the worst place as far as overall business climate. It is number one in property taxes, obviously. It is number three, I'm sorry, in income taxes, and number 4 in sales taxes. So, you know, if you push over here, it's going to come out somewhere else. You can't, you can't replace all those property tax dollars with increasing the sales tax double or income taxes drastically going up. You know, there's got to be a balance, and the reality of the situation is, just like any other critical situation, we need to freeze spending and prioritize, do a triage and evaluation of our overall spending, and then establish some priorities. I guarantee you, if Senate President Sweeney or Assembly Speaker Prieto were faced with losing their majorities and or losing their seats in the next election over this issue, overall taxes, I think you'd see some serious discussion going on, and I think you'd see some change.
That's a great point. It seems like people get upset about their taxes, but unless something drastic happens, they don't vote on it. Is that the case? Yeah,
complacency is a big problem here. You know, we are not having people really vote what needs to be done. It's the traditional voting methodology that's happening, that people will vote D or an R just because it's a D or an R, not looking at the issues that really need to be looked at closely in addressing the right candidates for the job. Look, the legislature's got a tough job, so does the governor and his administration. We have put ourselves in this position over decades. This didn't happen overnight, okay? We've continually let this thing creep to a point of, catastrophic levels, and no one has the courage at this point to step up and say enough's enough. What do we do to change this? The League has been pushing for a constitutional convention because we believe that the legislature doesn't have the courage to make the change. And
oh no, they don't. Because I talked to Mr. Prieto. We went to the Chamber of Commerce summit, which was an emergency summit to try to reduce taxes so we don't have businesses leave and can have more businesses come. And I asked him. I said, well, everybody's saying it's the taxes. The taxes have to change. Are the taxes going to change? And he went, no.
Of course not.
He said, no, it's not going to happen. We can't. As a matter of fact, we have to raise taxes, or we're not going to meet budget. So if you have the confidence in saying that, that means he knows he's never going to get voted out of office, and because he can do whatever he wants.
Look, in 2 years we'll have another gubernatorial election. If whoever the candidates are going into after the primary, going into the actual election, had to present a concrete plan for dealing with this issue with milestones over their first term, I think you would see an entirely different election than you're going to see with the typical rhetorical comments that are made out there, and it's all about image, et cetera. It was like, we spend $105 billion across the state annually. $34 billion of that is in education. A couple of years ago, we used to vote on school budgets back a decade or so ago. couple of years back, that got shifted, so we no longer vote on the budgets as long as they're under the, quote, cap. Well, that cap is very flexible, number one. But, they use the fact that people don't come out to vote. Until the citizens get fed up. The hands across New Jersey that preceded me here, I guess back in the early 90s or something, it's going to take that kind of an endeavor when you have leading politicians losing their seats, losing their majorities, et cetera, to start to get this as the top priority item.
Mayor, I'll give you the last word. And you've been talking about a reduction in property taxes. Is that ever going to happen?
20 years I've been working at it. It still hasn't happened. I don't hold a lot of hope, but we're going to continue to push for it and hope that that happens. I think that's the biggest single issue we have in the state of New Jersey. It's affecting the resale of homes. It's driving people out of this state, and we need to address it, because I can tell you in the 20 years I've been mayor, no one's come and complained to me about sales tax or income tax, but I hear it about property taxes all the time.
But we hear about the estate tax, you hear about the inheritance tax, and then now there's talk about increasing the gas tax. I mean, I guess the frustration is it just never seems to end. But to your points, the people that are frustrated have some power in this.
If they stepped up.
If they would show up to the polls. Thank you both for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mayor. I appreciate it. Jerry Cantrell, the president of the New Jersey Taxpayers Alliance, and Somerdale Mayor Gary Passanante, the chair of the League of Municipalities Property Tax Reform Task Force. You got to shorten that name. When we come back, the Asbury Park Press asked for legislators to sign a pledge to try to reduce property taxes. Wait till you hear how many signed it when we return.